Anna the Suburban Witch here, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how to get started with meditation. This video is aimed at those of you who maybe don't have a meditation practice and would like to start one, or maybe you've tried meditation in the past and you just can't get it. This is going to give you tons of tips on how to start it and how to stick with it and get your mind and body used to that meditation vibe so that you can progress it further and further along. So firstly, I would like to talk about something I call inactive versus active meditation. Now, I don't know if these two things are actually a term. I've not seen them written anywhere else, but it's what I call them, so you're welcome to use it. It makes sense to me. Now, inactive meditation is when you sit down, you have your hands on your knees, or you might be lying down in Shavasana. That's when you're lying straight down in yoga, and you're trying to still your mind and calm your thoughts. That is inactive. You're not doing anything. And then we have active meditation, and that is things like colouring in, painting, gardening, cleaning, doing the dishes, vacuuming, anything where your body is doing something physically, generally a repetitive motion that you don't really have to think about, and then your brain sort of has the space to move and roam and do as it pleases. So I'm going to go through a few different ways. If you are somebody that struggles with traditional inactive meditation, if you've tried that and you might have ADD or anxiety or OCD, a lot of those disorders can affect our ability to do inactive meditation. I've got a few tips for you, and that is to start with the active meditation. I think everyone can benefit from it, so I'll start with active and then we can go into the inactive in a minute. When I was a new mother, I went through some pretty terrible postnatal depression and anxiety, and then ended up with some PTSD and some OCD to throw it into the mix. So it was a pretty tough time, and one of the things I tried to do was to meditate, and I literally could not shut my mind off, and it was a physical incapability. I couldn't do it, and even though I was on very high medications, I still could not shut my mind off. It just wouldn't work. So what I did unknowingly was I actually started active meditation, and this was in the form of painting. So one day I just had the whim to grab some watercolors and go outside and paint a flower. I liked it, it made me feel good. I did it the next day, and it became a ritual where I literally did a painting every day. I was actually quite fast at it and kind of good at it. I'll show you a couple of the ones that I did. So something like this probably was about halfway through that process of painting. So I probably painted for about a year, so this might be 6 months in, and this might have taken me 10 minutes maybe. And what I would do is I was using watercolors. I just free flowed, and I was totally in the zone. And I didn't realize at the time, it was only in hindsight, that this was actually helping me get better. This was like art therapy. It wasn't painting my feelings as such, but it was giving my body something to do and my brain almost a task to focus on. Like, I want to paint a wolf. I'm going to paint a wolf. I want it to be in blue. So I get my blues out and I'm busy doing all of this stuff. And what it did was it gave my brain a break from those constant intrusive thoughts with the anxiety and the postnatal, which was about whether she was sleeping. Is she sleeping? Has she done this? It was a lot of, is she awake? Is she not awake? Is she awake? We had sleeping issues. It was a big deal. So it just cut off those thought trains and gave my mind something else to do. And this gradually trained my mind and my body to step away from those thought patterns. Okay, so it's a retraining of thought patterns. Closer to the end of when I love painting, I would still do it. I haven't, because I've been focusing on my business stuff. But closer to the end of that period of my life when I didn't need it so much anymore, I was painting things like this. Now this one, I remember sitting down with my mum. The original, this is a print, the original was A3. I sat down, my mum was across the table, we were just chatting, and I just said, I just need a minute, and I just painted it in less than 20 minutes, A3. A3 is bigger than this actual frame. Just did it, and I sat there and went, oh my God, that looks amazing. And it was really amazing what your brain can do when it gets a chance to just get out of its own way. Now, if painting is not your thing, which, it's not for everybody, then maybe colouring might be something really good for you. So books like this, the adult colouring in books. So I've got a couple. This one, my mum actually purchased for me. You can still see it's got my name on it from when I was in hospital with postnatal. So I could take that in, I could colour it in. Now these are great for you know, they've got tons of little lines and things that you can focus on. I like using a gel pen with them rather than a pencil. It just feels really good. But pencils work equally as well. I think I've used pencils in here. So, you know, you can get really detailed. So just drawing in the little colours, or just sort of go for your life. Now, those ones are great as well because you're focusing on the little thing, but you're not creative. So you're not in that creative space. Now, ideally, I want you to be in that creative space that is the most attuned to what you're wanting in that meditation space. So it's very similar when you're in creation space. It's almost like, you know, communing with God, right? You're getting this beautiful flush of ideas and inspiration and potentially communication from spirit team, those sorts of things. That's when you're in that creative space, that's what you're doing. So whilst the colouring books are fantastic, especially if you're not artistically inclined, I think they're great, but you want to ideally aim for a creative space. So whatever that means for you, that might be cooking, as long as you're not having to think too much and measure things too much, you know, just sitting there stirring the pot, or if it's gardening, you're just, you know, clipping some things or arranging flowers or whatever it is, something that your brain isn't super actively involved in, but you can just sort of flow. You want to be in flow. Flow is the perfect word. Another thing I started doing during that time was pottery. Now, pottery isn't super accessible for everyone. I did both wheel pottery. Can you tell I'm a hands-on type of artistic person? So this, for example, this beautiful cup of my tea was made on the pottery wheel. So, you know, you're sitting there, you've got the wet clay moving through your hands and, you know, you're just molding it. It's very, very earthy, very grounding. I highly recommend it. If you can't get to a wheel or you can't get your head around the wheel, something like this I just made with my hands, just a bit of clay. It's a little pinch pot. Actually, I think this might have been a coil pot. So you just roll into a little snake and then wrap it around all the way and then smooth out the edges. And yeah, it's a fantastic little bowl. I like it. It's kind of uneven and kooky. But that as well, just getting your hands to do something gives your brain that space. Now, it doesn't sound like traditional meditation, but it is. It's preparing you and it's training you. So after I did my painting and my pottery and I was, you know, really getting back into that creative space, and creativity is solar plexus, which I really needed to work on as well. Solar plexus and sacral chakra. So both of those chakras are being engaged whilst you're creative and you're doing those sorts of things. And that is, for me, what I needed. Your chakras might be slightly different depending on why you're seeking meditation, okay? But if you can kind of align it with those, that's going to be great. Gardening is going to be really good for your root chakra as well as your heart chakra. So there's a few things you can do there. Now, when I finally went to try inactive meditation, so sitting down, closing my eyes, I found I could suddenly do it. It had taken about a year of training my mind and my body to a little bit more stillness, and suddenly I could do that, and it was fantastic. But the first thing I tried was a guided meditation using, gosh, it was one of those apps that you download, mindfulness app, one of those. Oh my goodness, I hated it. I really hated it because he would tell me when to breathe, and it was different to when my natural breathing comes, so I would get really frustrated, and those apps were out for me. They work for a lot of people, but for me, they weren't great. So I ditched that, but I still liked the guided aspect of it because what it did was it gave my mind something to focus on, so I wasn't just sitting there in sort of limbo, right? So if you want to try a guided meditation, you can try those apps. They are useful for some people, so give it a go. But don't stick with it if it doesn't work for you. If it's not working, cut it out, try something else. YouTube has some fantastic ones. I'm going to link at the bottom of this video my favorite guided ones, especially the spirit guide meditations. They're really, really helpful. Now the other thing, so after I'd done a couple of those and my mentor gave me some of his own meditations, so CB Bjork, I believe he might be marketing those for sale as well at some point. So those sorts of ones are really good. They're just someone talking you through it. Teaching box breathing. So CB taught me how to box breathe, which is funny because I was trying to tell my husband about it and he's like, that's what we learn in the military. I was like, oh, there we go. Our lives are crossing over. So box breathing is really helpful. And, you know, they always talk about breathing and slow your breathing and all of that. But it can be helpful to have a count, right? So to know what to do. So you try breathe in for 2, hold for 2, breathe out for 2, hold for 2. Okay, and you try that. That's called box breathing, right? So if you're doing that and you're counting it in your mind, 1, 2, hold, 1, 2, hold, 1, 2, hold, 1, 2, hold. You tell I was a dancer. That is going to, if you've got one of those active minds, it's going to help you give something to focus on. After a while, you notice you don't need to count anymore. Or you can go 3 counts, 4 counts, whatever's good for you. So that is a really good way. Actually, that is the best way in terms of breathing techniques to do any form of astral projection or out-of-body experiences. That's when I've had those sorts of things happen, is by doing that consecutive box breathing. And really, it lowers your heart rate, it lowers all your stress. So another thing you can do is listen to something like a binaural beat or some meditation chakra style things on YouTube. I'll put a few more links down there as well, and some tones as well. I do have one video on a root chakra binaural tone. So it's just a single pure tone, and what that does is it aligns with the tone for your root chakra. And if you sit there for 10 minutes and listen to that, it's going to help that chakra align. And it's also just like a bit of background noise that your brain isn't then searching for other noises, especially if you live somewhere that's quite quiet or quite noisy and you just need something else. You can either pop your headphones on or you can have that sort of tone just in the background. I find that really helpful. The next thing we can talk about is visualization. I find visualization really helps when you're meditating, especially if you're a visual person like me, because it gives your brain, again, something to focus on and something to do. Because one of the problems that a lot of us come up against is we try to completely clear our mind, and that's not what meditation's about. It's not about sitting there and then thinking, oh, I forgot to call my mum back. Shh, stop, no more, quiet, we're trying to clear our mind. Yeah, but she really wanted me, shh. That's not what it's about. That's not, helping anyone, right? What it is about is usually sitting back, taking a back seat and observing your thoughts. So you sit back and it goes, should have called mum. Oh, I didn't send that email. But you're not controlling, right? You're not stepping in. You're not following on with that thought line and starting to go, oh, when I get up, I'm going to go and do this, this, and this, right? You're not following on with that thought, but you're watching them. You're observing them. You see it come in, hello thought, and out it flies, right? That's what you're wanting. That's when you get to the next level, right? That you can sit there in silence and observe your thoughts. That's the goal. And the goal of that as well is to then know your own thoughts, know what your brain does. So when you do work on your clairs, so your clairaudience, clairvoyance, all of that, you know what your brain is normally like. So you will recognize when something doesn't come from you. So I will recognize now when a thought or a word gets dropped in. So if I'm reading tarot or I'm doing a reading for someone or an intuitive anything, and it drops in and it might say, just one word, it might be stomach. And well, stomach, okay, that's weird. I heard the word stomach and I'll put that in. And those are the ones that are, intuitive hits when I write out my readings. Because I know that that thought didn't come from me. That was from something else, okay? So from my spirit team or the person I'm reading, their spirit team potentially as well. So that's what the goal is, right? But let's get back to visualizations. So a really simple one to start, and this is one that my mentor, CB Bjork, taught me, and that is when you breathe in, so you do your box breathing, so you breathe in through your nose for 2 counts or 3 or 4, hold for 2, breathe out through your mouth, hold for 2. And when you're doing that, you visualize these little air molecules going up through your nose, and they've got little positive symbols on them, right? Little plus signs. In the positive, and when you breathe out through your mouth, you imagine anything coming out has little negatives on it, okay? So in the positive, out the negative. And you're imagining that. That is a fantastic visualization to start with. You can then move on from there. So your guided meditations will take you on a visual journey as well. You see a staircase, you take the first step, you go down the staircase. Those are the sorts of ones you'll hear in past life regression meditations. But you can do your own ones as well. So you can, for example, imagine that roots are starting to grow. This is a really popular one. Roots are growing out from your tailbone down into the earth, spreading out, whether they go wide or deep. Are the roots gnarly? Are they strong? Are they straight? How do they look? And you really just want to go into whatever pops into your head first and flow with that, right? Go all the way down to the center of the earth as far as you can. Some people can't imagine that, so just go with what your imagination is capable of. And then take a deep breath, and this beautiful white light or green light or whatever light comes to your head comes up those roots, up into your tailbone, and starts to spread throughout your body. And then when you breathe out, any negativity goes back into the earth to be recycled. breathe in that Mother Earth energy and breathe out. So that's that's a grounding meditation, okay? It's getting you really rooted into the current moment. You can do spirit guide meditations. The one that I do personally, and the one that helped me meet my guide for the first time, was I was doing my box breathing, and I think I cleared my chakras, and then I imagined that I stood up from where I was sitting and walked out the door, and when I opened the door, it was another place, and this other place was where I was going to meet them. And the place that I go to is always, if you've read any of the Chronicles of Narnia, the very first book, which is The Magician's Nephew, they go to something called the Wood Between the Worlds. That is my spirit guide place. So it is basically like a tiny little wood, a wooded area, and there are pools of water around the outside, and that is almost like a little portal. So I step through from a pool of water, my guides come through another one, depending where they're coming from, that's like their access point to me. And this wood between the worlds, it's very quiet, it's warm, it's still, time doesn't move there. That's what it feels like to me. So I'll open the door, step into this wooded area, and I'll sit with my back against a tree and then wait for someone to come through as well. And that is when visually I saw a woman come in, and I was like, oh, hello. And again, you have that thought, did I just make that up? Is this just my imagination? Yes, but like Albus Dumbledore says, does that make it any less real? And especially because this woman who came through, she told me her name. I then researched that name. It's an actual name, even though I thought I'd made it up in my head. I'd never heard it before. And then I went on to get validation. So if you meet your spirit guides in meditation, they will verify it within 3 days. So you will see their name or their image or something like that within 3 days, clear as day. That will go, okay, that's a sign. And that's what happened to me. So very, very cool stuff. And that's where you can go with your meditation. But for now, when you're doing times as well, start with 2 minutes, go to 5, then go to 7, then go to 10, gradually increase. You don't have to be meditating for an hour a day. But I always say, if you don't have time for meditation, you're the one that does need the hour a day. But just try and move it into your week. If you can keep up a schedule of meditating 3 times a week for 20 minutes, amazing. You have a meditation practice, and that is going to skyrocket your psychic abilities, your intuition, and your emotional control as well. So I hope this video gave you a few tips and starting points with getting into a meditation practice, ways that you can go about it and begin training your mind and your body into that state. And I hope it takes away some of the stress that comes with trying to start meditating, right? I'm not good at this, I can't still my mind, I can't close my thoughts off, We all go through struggles, and we all go through, I have times when I sit down and I just can't meditate. I go, all right, I'll go have a chamomile tea and go to bed. And if you fall asleep when you're meditating, meditate sitting up, okay? Or don't do it at night, do it in the morning. So it's going to be different for everyone, depending on your body and your brain. Just try a few different things out. There's no wrong way to do it if you're leaving feeling refreshed, okay? Look at the comments below, not the comments, the caption below. I'll pop a few of those sounds and guides and things like that there for you. Feel free to ask me any questions, happy to answer. I am not a meditation expert by any means, but I do have a meditation practice and I have struggled with it. So hopefully my story helps you with your story. As always, I look forward to chatting with you guys next time. Bye for now.